wanted to show you guys what I found. It's not good. Good morning. So I wasn't planning on filming until tomorrow morning, but I just came out. The bed directly behind me that I'm pointing at right now, we have not finished the hoops. See, those are still up. That is our plan for this weekend, but we did end up having 2 nights of below freezing temperatures. I think we got down to 31 and 27 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we decided to just move the frame in place and throw some old plastic over it to try to cover it up. And that worked. The plants are still alive underneath it, but I came out this morning to water everything in really well before we finish the frame and cover it up. It's going to be up in the 80s again today. Welcome to Colorado weather. And wanted to show you guys what I found. It's not good. So I had this problem a lot at our old house that we lived at. It's been 5 years that we've been in this house now, where I would come out really excited. I would always have something like just ready to harvest the day before. And that was my plan, was to harvest the next day. Well, today it's not that I had something ready to harvest, but I was getting ready to pull back the burlap to see if any of those seeds had germinated, given that it's been really cold temperatures. Now they are lettuce and kale seeds, so they'll germinate at much lower temperatures. Oh my. Are you ready for this? So we did not have this buttoned up last night, and it looks like some critter decided that this covering was just perfect and definitely covering up something that they wanted, and they got in here and dug up all of this soil. I really don't think it was my dog Baker. He's not a huge digger, and this would have been a lot of effort for him to get in here and dig this up like this. But so I had a bunch of different varieties of kale seeds in here. So I am just going to move the burlap back in place. Right there are a couple of kale plants that had been really chewed down to a nubbin, but you can see they're putting back leaves. So I'm just going to freshen up the soil a little bit. I doubt that they got every single seed that was in there because I seeded pretty heavily because I don't expect them to grow to full-size plants. And we'll just water it in, and I guess we'll see if anything comes up. So I was just getting ready to put the burlap back in place before I watered it in, and I did find a nice little surprise, so I thought I'd show you guys. Okay, do you see those little babies? Oh, you can even see some sprouted up underneath that kale plant. Right by that little leaf on the ground. And I did notice a few sprouts. Let's see. Can my camera find them? Oh, there you go. Yep. So those were all put into the garden 6 days ago, last Sunday. It's Saturday now. I did about an 8-hour workday in the garden. Just did a whole bunch of just hucking seeds into the garden beds. And it's really funny because, you know, I talked about this in one of my first videos on the channel about don't rely on your brain to remember what you planted, where you planted it. Good morning. Once you get more experience, you'll be able to start to identify different seedlings as they're coming up. But it's always a good idea to go back and film just a short clip on your phone, even if you're, you know, not recording it for YouTube or to share with anybody else, because you can always reference back and be like, oh, all right, I put the kale there, the bok choy there, and not have to wait. It also helps with thinning plans, especially with the fall garden, the winter garden, at least in Colorado. You know, I don't expect anything that's growing undercover to actually get to a full-size plant. So the spacing is a lot tighter. I'm not going to thin things as much because most things will be harvested, you know, as small to medium-sized plants. I mean, I'll definitely give them a chance to get to full size as I'm, you know, thinning them out and harvesting them. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's just really funny because as I was, you know, looking at that and looking at those sprouts, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I know it's some kind of lettuce. I got some really cool seeds from Baker Creek, and one of them was like called Celtis. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but it's really cool. It looks like, to me, it looks like a kale plant where it grows up with like a tall stalk and then the leaves come off of it. And I was telling my husband how I was really interested to try this out, although I don't think it's actually the right season for it, but I had the seed, so why not try? But I was telling him, they say that you can harvest the leaves, and then once the stalk is full size, you can actually eat the stalk, and it's supposed to taste kind of like a cucumber, which I just think that would be so cool to have cucumbers in your garden in the winter. Especially since I did terrible with cucumbers this year. I haven't done well with cucumbers at this property, and I can't quite figure out why. So I'm definitely going to be spending some time over the winter doing some research on that and figuring out what exactly the problem is. But yeah, so I'm going to water these guys in and finish getting this frame covered with plastic. I'll show you here what the rest of the garden looks like that hasn't been undercover. So you can see over there, there is a chard plant that I didn't cover. I put buckets over the last couple. I plan to dig those up. There's a chard and a kale over there. Dig those up and put them into one of the other beds. They'll be fine. They'll come back in the spring, but since they're such nice sized plants and I have room for them, I want to get them moved over. But it's really interesting, like this bean plant that's growing up, it doesn't seem to have been affected by the cold, but those are all the tomatoes. They are so done with the season. All the zucchini plants, you can see they are frozen down to their core. So I will come through today, clip them at the base right next to the soil level, leave the roots in. So I'm kind of doing like a modified no dig garden. Obviously we brought in all of this soil when we built this garden area. Lots of topsoil, fill dirt, because it was super sloped, and my husband's amazing. He did all of it. I can't remember. I always say this number wrong, but I think it was like 2 or 4 tons worth of dirt, and he moved it by wheelbarrow back here because there's just not enough space to get any other equipment back here. But anyway, so they are raised beds, but I tilled them for the last time last season. And so now I'm just, adding a layer of compost and, only working the soil where I absolutely have to, like for root crops and things like that. They like loose soil. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like in Colorado, the wind is so, strong sometimes. We're lucky because we do have this shed kind of blocking us a little bit. It's a pretty nice line of trees. But it can just get so hot and so dry. We haven't had rain in probably 6 weeks. So the soil gets really compacted, even when it's new soil. Like this isn't clay soil in these beds because we brought all the soil in. But I just keep thinking about all the people that are trying to grow their soil in these conditions, starting with clay. Like I would be so frustrated right now. But anyways, that's enough rambling. I need to get to work. So this little chard plant has just been getting its butt kicked. We had a lot of earwig damage and things like that. So I don't see any actual pests on them anymore. So I am going to clear the mulch back and dig this guy up. We actually still have a couple of beets in here. They're putting off all new greens. So those will stay in for quite a while. See, this little guy's putting off new leaves. And let's see what we have under this bucket. Very pest-riddled chard plant. I have fully neglected this guy. I've just left him to be. So we will clean up the leaves from the bottom so we can get a clear idea where the root system is, dig him up, and move him into one of the other beds. Good morning. So it is now Sunday. It is 37 degrees outside, much colder than I had anticipated. So I came out to do some more filming, kind of talk about our plans for the day, finish getting the plastic on these tubes. And guess what, folks? Whatever dug up the garden Friday night, dug it up again last night. I don't know, but I'm really glad that we're going to get this hinged hoop on today, so we can fully close it up at night, and hopefully whatever is doing this will stop doing it. Hopefully it doesn't like try to tear through the plastic. That'll be interesting to see, but I'll keep you guys updated. So a little earlier I had shown you the the chard plants that I intended to move, and so they are now in here. I know it looks really tiny. It was so big yesterday, but I pulled off all the outer leaves just to help it with transplant shock. And that's the really big one that I had neglected. Nice little yellow chard, and then that's that big ragged jack. Okay, so it's way too cold to work outside right now. I just talked to Hogan and he agreed. So we're going to go out this afternoon to do all the garden stuff. But I have a pretty good to-do list. I just got this off of Amazon and I'm really liking it. It was like $6. So yeah, we got a big list. Let's get some stuff done. So I'm really good about drying herbs, but not so good about putting them away. So this is some sage that I had already dried, some rosemary. This is actually from last year's garden. This is a bunch of mixed herbs. I think there's oregano, basil, and thyme in there. It's all dried, and I kind of crunched it up, and we'll get the stems and stuff out of there. And then this is some dried mint and some more dried thyme. This is how I like to dry thyme, just cutting it all to that length that fits in these little plastic containers. There's holes in it, so it does vent, and it seems to work really well. And then I can just strip the leaves off. Okay, so we're going to start with that bag of the mixed dried herbs. I'm just kind of shaking them up a little bit here. And now I've got a bowl and a colander, and I'm going to go ahead and set that inside there. Dump out the contents and start shaking to release all the loose leaves, and hopefully the stems will settle into the top. It's a lot of shaking, but this is how I decided to do it this day. Let me know if you guys have suggestions on a better way to do this, but it seemed to work pretty well. And now I'm going through and just picking out the loose stems that obviously couldn't make it through those holes in the colander. And then I will continue shaking and crunching the leaves until it's all at the bottom. And I realized that I needed my compost bucket handy so I could toss those stems in there. So when I could grab that and set it over on the counter. So as I pick them out, I can just toss them right in there. I love this compost bucket. I actually got it from Bed Bath & Beyond like a year ago, I think. And now it's pretty obvious what I'm doing. I'm just using a funnel to get the herbs into the small bottle. I had to shake it pretty hard to get it all in there. Actually ended up using a skewer later on to actually get the rest of the herbs in there. But yeah, worked out pretty good. And there you have it, our garden herb mix. Didn't record the rest, but you'll see soon. Okay, so we just finished up. I ended up with a jar of mint, full jar of sage, 2 jars of what we're going to just call a garden mix. It's oregano, basil, and thyme, half a jar of rosemary, and I actually had this jar in my cabinet. It had some just plain oregano in it. So I put that in this jar and then did that. So yeah, I always try to buy all my spices either in bulk, or if I am in a pinch, I always try to get the glass jars because I like to repurpose them. They're also great for keeping seeds. So there we go. There's our herbs put away for the day. One thing off the list, 10,000 to go. Okay, so it is now Sunday afternoon. Let me see. It's 5:20. It's still very, very cold. It never warmed up over 40 degrees. So sorry for spinning around and making you guys crazy. So yeah, it never warmed up over 40 degrees. So we just had to come out here because the critters got back into that bed again. We only got the first layer of plastic on. I didn't order enough plastic to put new plastic on all the beds. So I ended up putting new plastic on the long bed, one single hoop, and then we have this one that's a double hoop. That's what I'm going to show you now. Okay, so obviously it's not done. Just the first layer of plastic. And again, we're repurposing what we had. Eventually, We may rebuild these to have a little bit more of a gap, because the goal is at least 2 inches between the inner hoop and the outer hoop. 3 is ideal, but at least 2 inches. And so for some reason, it's like exactly the same at the top. You know, we're working with scrap materials here. So, but I'm really happy with it. I am just happy that we have something to fully cover this bed and hopefully keep whatever was getting in there and digging everything up out of it. We will see how it goes. I haven't looked at the overnight lows yet, so I'm not sure how cold it's actually going to get tonight, but I know this will be great insulation for all the plants. So one final look at the garden before I bid you adieu. Okay, so yeah, you can see here the single plastic. My husband and I were just talking about how we need to clean this up, and I think what we're going to do is dry it out, roll it up, and just tape it to the side so it's not dragging there on the ground. But this is great. We just closed this up maybe 20 minutes ago, and you can already see condensation. So it's not super, super cold, but it's definitely keeping warm temps in there. Did not get all my cutting back done. I'm just definitely notorious for being one of those people that I think I have more time than I actually do. Connor came out and helped me button up these beds. You know, the plastic's a little bit disarrayed. I did find a couple of holes, but again, you know, it's just barely over 40 degrees, and you can see, you know, we're already getting condensation in there. So it's definitely holding temperature, warming up, creating a nice environment for all the babies that are growing in there. So I am going to go inside and warm up a cup of cider and enjoy this wintry fall weather with my husband and prepare for the week ahead of us. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend. I hope that you had a blessed weekend and that I will catch you in my next video. Thanks again for enjoying the experience of life with me.